This is Spill the Sauce podcast with
Sam Hastings with Sam Sauce.
and Radi from Fire.
Let's keep spilling that good stuff.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Spill the Sauce podcast. My name is Radi from Fire, and I'm here joined by my co-host
Sam Hastings with Sam Sauce.
And tonight we are joined with our buddy. With who? Okay, we have somebody here with us. I don't know what I'm saying.
All we need to know
Sean
is he's
from
DTF.
Down to Ferment. Sean, I have a question. What the fuck's fermentation?
Fermentation is a lovely magical thing that is in our everyday lives, from bread to beer to hot sauce. Fermentation is micro bacterias doing their thing, eating and pooping, basically.
How did you get into fermenting things? I know that Sam's also like a fermenting king. So you guys are gonna have so much fun in this episode together because I'm just gonna sit here and just like watch you discuss all these topics that to me are like just mad science, honestly. Being somebody that doesn't ferment his sauces, I do everything like fresh, if you may. So yeah, I'll just let you guys get into it. Sam, go ahead.
Dude, fermenting's awesome, man. I've known about these guys for what? You've only been going 2 years strong or like 1 year deep?
We actually just celebrated our 2-year anniversary in February. And we have every year we're in business, we release an anniversary sauce. So we just released the 2-year anniversary sauce, which is awesome.
Was that fermenting for that long?
What's that?
Was that fermenting for that long?
No. It was actually fermenting for about 8 months though. So it is a barrel aged sriracha. So we fermented Fresnos and Reapers and garlic and onion and all those good stuff, and then we added, once that acidified, we threw it into a whiskey barrel, a single malt whiskey barrel that was freshly dumped, and then just let it do its thing, kind of like Tabasco style, but better.
Dude, that alone sounds delicious. Like I just want to like try that right now.
Oh, I've been eating the crap out of it. It's probably literally my favorite sauce I've made to date.
And then you got like a dozen bottles back stock, because otherwise once that's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, and it's gone. We made so we numbered every bottle. I wish I had one. I literally put it on my dinner right now. So but we made 772 bottles, and then once they're gone, it's gone. But I sold about like probably around 200 at the show at the Fiery Foods Fest. People were digging it, so I was really happy with how it turned out, and that is the king of fermentation right there. Is the aging too. That's the beauty of fermentation, is that aging properties, and you get those depths of flavor and everything. It's super, super cool.
Well, so you might want to explain that for people, because you said once it hit like the acidity that you were looking for, then you were able to do other things. Like you're not going to throw that mash into a barrel right off the bat. So, I mean, that's a good point to make.
There you go. No, 100% correct. So basically, what we do to protect ourselves, because I don't know if like Tabasco, I know they barrel age their sauce for like 3 years and stuff. But I don't know if they ferment in barrels, like, or if they have an acidified mash that they throw in. But what?
Oh, sorry to cut you off. Keep going. I know I was there tons of times before. I know Roddy was just there, so it might be more frequent with him. But for my information years ago, all they do is they just make a mash with peppers and salt in a ratio. They fill the barrel straight up. So, I mean, it's just like a fermented like crock, like open air fermenting. And then they like tap, and then they fill with salt too. So, I mean, essentially there's enough juices going, and the salt content so high. It's kind of just like an aged mash. I imagine you could say, yeah, there's some acids that work there, but the salt content's so high, it's basically like an open crocked fermentation, or like an aging aspect. It's kind of what I remember. Is that kind of what you got out of that, Roddy?
Yeah, sure.
Next.
I know, no.
Yeah.
So when I was there, I do remember. So they show you the whole process of like them making the mash, and all that goes into the barrel is just this salt and pepper mash, and then they cap the barrel itself with more salt, and then they just leave it, let it do its thing for 3 years. Um,
Yeah, dude.
I don't think it was that complicated.
Yeah. Well, mine felt way more complicated because I was like, I don't want, because we don't do such high salt percentage with ours, so I don't want mine going bad. So what we did to protect against that and how we aged is we fermented it first. So fermentation happens in multiple stages and levels and stuff like that. So basically what we do is we fermented it for a month. In general, fermentation slows down around the 20-day mark, roughly, because all the readily available foods and sugars have already been eaten up by all the microbacteria. And basically what they're in like a fighting for food where they're like, okay, where's the rest of the food? So it slows down a lot. You don't get as much activity and everything like that, and not as much gas production. But basically, we acidified it first and then threw it into a barrel. So that way the pH was already good. And we were already sitting at like 3.5 pH when it went into the barrel. So it's already very, very shelf stable. And the salt content, again, helped as well to protect it. So it was a combination of, like most shelf stable hot sauces, pH and salt content to protect it.
Yeah, because I think of that like the Tabasco way. It'd be like what I remember starting goofing around with like, once again, open crock fermentation where you got like an old Red Wing crock or whatever, and you just throw it with peppers,
What's a
10%
crock?
salt.
Same.
It'd be like an large open dish, like a ceramic jar that you couldn't see through.
Okay.
It's like what people would make like sauerkraut in and shit. It's like old
Yeah.
school, but then you just have the peppers mixed with salt, and then the top layer, which is then eventually you'd get some juices. But you just always make sure there's like a dusting of salt on top, which I did that for like months and months and months, and then it got to the point where it's like sometimes some funk would grow on top. Just pick it off. I mean, it's just like a little chem yeast. But then it'd be like there's no juices anymore. It was just like hard.
It dries up.
Dry, but then you just hit it with like vinegar and it would make it delicious, awesome, like Louisiana, vinegar forward sauce. But yeah, that was like my first intro. I'm like, wait a second, I don't think this is what I'm going for, but I mean, it works. It's a good finished product.
Yeah, which is funny. My wife actually bought a fermenting crock from the thrift store. It's a nice big brown one. It's about this big, and it's funny. She got it for like $15, and I'm like, damn, that's a steal because like those things are usually $60-$70, but it was labeled as a soup bowl. Like people didn't know what it was, so it was labeled as a soup bowl. And then I experiment around with that in the crock and whatever, but it's just so funny because it does kind of look like a little bit of a soup bowl, but
yeah, hungry man soup bowl.
It's huge. It's like a gallon. But
so I know
just into this fermenting game and like ferment a sauce, so I can join this conversation because
Well, okay, so you're already getting in a little bit with the fermenting talk. Roddy's getting immersed in that. I mean, Roddy, let us know your confidence involving like kombucha. I mean, are you familiar with that process at all? Because that's something else that down to ferment really does hard.
Nope.
Okay.
I have not done. I don't even drink kombucha. I don't think I've ever had a kombucha.
Bro, it's delicious.
Just for the show.
He's literally drinking it right now.
He's already doing it.
No, I have never.
So honestly, what kombucha is? It's fermented tea. It's basically tea that just ferments. But the difference between kombucha and when we ferment peppers is there's anaerobic and aerobic. So kombucha is aerobic, meaning it needs oxygen to live because the oxygen creates what's called a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, or you've heard it by its other name, a SCOBY. So the SCOBY is what breathes, and it's bacteria and yeast, kind of like how beer is made too, Roddy looks so lost.
No, you crushed it. I'm just like looking at Roddy. Because you're just like, or people call it a SCOBY, and I'm sure Roddy's like, oh yeah, yep, that's what it is.
Hey, I'm listening. I may look lost, but I'm definitely listening and learning. Okay.
Yeah, because a SCOBY, what is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast? That's what a
Yes.
SCOBY stands for, the acronym.
Yes. So a lot of people, there's a misnomer. Sam, I don't know if you've seen like kombucha brewing, but the little pellicle on top.
Yeah,
The
that'd be
raft that
considered
forms.
would that be considered chem yeast as well?
No, that is what's called a pellicle, and
Oh, that's the goopy brown where you can scrape.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's cellulose. That's literally just cellulose, and what happens is that forms because a lot of people mislabel that as the SCOBY. The SCOBY is not that raft. It can house the bacteria and the yeast and everything like that and act as a quote unquote hotel, but the SCOBY itself is the liquid. And when you're rebrewing kombucha, you want to use starter liquid. You don't want to just use that little thin piece of raft that you throw in.
Okay,
It's
because
like-
I completely got that wrong, because I've made kombucha a ton, and I always got to the point where I was making it really good, and then I'd go away for a bit, and I'd just let it go to vinegar and just see how long it could just sit in the corner. Like, I'm just talking, I had like a whole crack system set up. I had it for at least maybe like 2 years, and it was still
wow.
gelatinous, but I mean, it's a massive membrane. So that is not the SCOBY. So it's like the goop underneath that's kind of connected to it a little.
It's the liquid. The liquid itself is the SCOBY. It's the starter
I
liquid.
did not know that, because it would
so-
just be
I have
that
a
big
question.
gelatinous thing.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is that the same thing that grows in like vinegar sometimes?
Yes, it's
The
also
mother.
called the mother. Yes.
Yeah, the mother. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Is
So
that so? Like, is that like a safe thing for like for consumption? Like,
yes. So
Okay.
basically, what it is just there's a little extra SCOBY, or like how you get that in the vinegar sometimes, and
Yeah.
you see like little
Good
strands.
vinegar.
Yeah.
It's
So
legit
what
shit.
you're getting is whether the vinegar was pasteurized or not when it was bottled, you're still getting more bacteria and yeast as you're opening and closing it, going in and out from the air. Okay, so you're gonna get little microbes going in and out of there, and so what they're doing is that vinegar is now a great environment to eat. If there's any extra sugars or anything like that, it depends upon what vinegar you're using, but it's perfectly safe.
I've seen it mostly in like apple cider vinegar.
Yes, because it's
Like
higher
the
sugar.
good stuff. Yep. Because like you'll like white wine vinegar, it's like you ain't seeing shit. That's so processed. There's nothing. But yeah, like good vinegars, and that's why. Well, like with Sean's but with I'm not really sure 100% of like your background experience, like working as a restaurants and chefs. I mean, have you goofed around and made vinegars? Like, I've done like chamomile vinegars, or you just goofy shit that you just start with a mother, like we're talking about Roddy.
How did you start? How do you start vinegar? How do you start from like scratch to make a vinegar? Tell me every step right now, as if you were like telling me to do it like that, I'm gonna do it tomorrow.
So basically you're using scraps, right? Scraps and water, and it needs some sort of like sugar. It needs a little bit of sugar because it needs to eat, right? So like apple cider vinegar, you're using apple scraps, and hell, you can use cores, you can use skins, you can use whatever you want, really. You can just chuck whole apples in there if you really wanted to. But what it basically is, you need to acidify it or make sure it goes under 4.6 within the first like 24 to 36 hours, because if you don't, mold is going to get attracted to it. So that's why we do backsplash of other vinegars or other live cultured for probiotics and stuff like that, throwing it back into there. It's the same, literally the making vinegar and making kombucha is almost identical in the process. You're throwing those live cultures back in to help eat and jumpstart the ferment, so molds don't come in and have their way with everything. So but you also kind of want to keep things, relatively below the surface and whatnot. You don't, I mean, in a lot of vinegar production, I've seen people just let it sit, kind of like how you make tepache. But they just let it sit. It depends. You're you're playing a gambling game. It depends upon how much you're acidifying the starter in the first place.
how like adverse you are. Because I imagine like if you've never done this, Roddy, even just doing like fermenting, it's gonna be terrifying. But like once you get going, even like making kombucha and stuff, like yeah, you want to make sure your hands are clean. You don't want to fidget fuck with all the microbes and everything. But you get to the point where you're pretty comfortable. It's like, oh, dude, this is easy as shit. It's just comfortability. And then like I don't know about you, or if the missus ever drank like red wine, white wine. If you ever got like a little left in a bottle, I mean, you can goof around, like, try to make your own vinegars. That's like the starter. You can build more off of it. Well, that's something else, dude. But I mean, yeah, like that just shows how much fermentation is a part of truly everyday life, whether you know it or not. I mean,
well, that's the beautiful thing about fermentation is because you could literally just have something sitting there, and if it's the right conditions, like a bowl of scraps and some water, if it's in the right conditions and you get the right amount of bacteria in there, it could literally turn to vinegar because fermentation just happens regardless. Anything
that
can
or
ferment,
like
really.
alcohol. That's not like back in the day how like alcohol is created. It was just spoiling. So fermenting, how I describe it, is a controlled rot. It's a controlled spoiling where you're controlling the amount that food or whatever is rotting or spoiling to the point where it's creating like the acids, the gases, or the alcohol. It's just controlled rot. It's pretty metal.
It's very similar to cheese production, like when you're talking about like blue cheese and stuff like that. So the funny thing is all blue cheese is controlled mold growth. All fermentation is controlled mold growth or controlled bacterial growth. Basically what you're doing is you're just tipping the scales in the favor of the beneficial bacteria. That's all you're doing. And then letting them do their thing. The stuff that we can eat. Well, not the shit that that gets us sick or anything like that. It was just making sure that we create the right environment for the good bacteria, and that's it. And then once you create and you've done that over and over and over, it gets really easy and really comfortable because you're like, oh, I know these variables that can go wrong, because I've had batches go bad, like not professionally, not like with down to ferment, but in like the experimental phase, I've had batches where I'm like, oh crap, what happened? Like I got that calm buildup and stuff like that too. That's why I got away from brines, honestly. I don't like doing brines because it feels a little bit more higher maintenance for me. So
can you explain what brines are so people know?
Oh yeah, totally. So a brine is basically a salted liquid that you sit vegetables or anything in. Like when you make pickles, you're just immersing it in a brine. If you're pickling something, you're adding vinegar to it. If you're fermenting the pickles, which fermentation is essentially a pickle as well. So if you're fermenting pickles, it's creating its own acid. If you're pickling a cucumber, you're adding acid to it to help it acidify.
That's actually pretty fucking metal.
That's a really good
very
point.
metal.
Because people will like in the old school way of like like Asian like pickles, it's all fermented. So people would be like, oh, they would have like their house pickle, and it's not like kosher dills. It's like this crock of the liquid they keep adding stuff to, and it's just pickled anything. But then it translates to kimchi or anything like the pickle boys. They just like do pickling. But then we were talking in the hot sauce summit, there was a maker that they're trying to ferment everything, and they're going the brine route. Which I don't really care for either. It's a lot of work, and to scale that upwards, I couldn't fathom that.
It's a lot harder. It's not.
You'd need 50-gallon barrels with like cheese net to keep everything submerged. It's a lot. I mean, I have had errors with like, because I just do like lacto fermentation where I'm just taking all the air out of the mash and like vacuum seal bags, but that's 5 pounds of produce that I can ferment in like a bag. I could do multiple of them. But still, I imagine like scaling upwards, it's better doing what you're doing, Sean, because you're able to get a little more out of that with rather than a dozen inflatable bags all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's one of the reasons why mashes are beneficial though too, is because you're getting a lot more bottles of sauce out of a lot smaller of an area, rather than just fermenting whole peppers or whatever that you'd need like 50-gallon barrels for, just to blend them up and add some brine to it and stuff like that. But that's also the reason why we do the kombucha, is because the kombucha is like our way of controlling our pH, right? Instead of grabbing vinegar, which are low pH, I brew the kombucha, and it controls the pH to the point that I want it. I want it exactly right where the peppers ferment. So if my pH of my peppers is 3.5 at the end of the fermentation, I can pull my kombucha at 3.5. So it's not they're symbiotic, right? So they're both 3.5 and they're not going any lower in acidity. So it doesn't overwhelm certain flavor profiles.
Yeah, except like the pH was really low on one, but the other one was like really high. It basically kickstart that real quickly by, ooh, let's party in a bottle, kind of like what Zach would do with High Desert.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You don't want to party in the bottle.
I've heard the story, and I'm glad that they found a new backer. So that was awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, he's basically the happiest guy you've never seen in person.
He hates the spotlight, dude. He hates it.
He really does. But in that
He's very
sense,
funny.
you gotta fuck with him. You gotta be like, dude, give me a big old hug. He'll whisper in your ear, I will kill you.
Yeah, I met Zach at the West Coast Hot Sauce Festival, and
Nice,
he
dude.
honestly, dude, he's been such a huge help to me too. I've talked with him through Facebook and stuff. He gave me some tips and stuff for like how he's filling bottles and stuff like that. He's just super super helpful. I've never come across a nicer dude that's just like, the one thing I love about Zach too is just like no bullshit. Like he's just
No.
straight to
He's
the
very
point.
straightforward.
I love it.
You think him and Scott from Lucky Dog would either be best fucking friends or biggest enemies because they both have that like no bullshit. They're funny dudes, but they're both super helpful. I know Zach.
Yeah.
He's straight out like a lot of, I mean, I don't want to say a lot of us, but there are a few of us small batch makers that we want to build the community. We want to help people. Some it's a party of one, Limp Bizkit style. It's all about me. But for the most part, like Zach's like one of the good ones where he wants to help. He's not gonna hold his punches. He'll be like, sure, like, hey, I got some packaging I'm working on. If you want in on it, let me know. We can bump up the minimum order or whatever it may be. Not many people are gonna do that shit for you.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, you figure it out yourself, dickhead. Which it's like, okay, I get it, but it's like, it's a good point that I always make with Hayden with Cooking Outdoors, young kid. I'm always just like, dude, I want to help you because why should you make the same mistakes I already did? That's fucking dumb.
Yeah. And it's so helpful, but there's also a point where you're like, hey, I there's a leg up, right? But it's also like, I'm not gonna do all this for you, right? Because I try as much as I can to give like in Facebook groups and stuff like that to give info and helpful like things on how we ferment and everything like that. But then they're like, can I have your recipe? I'm like, no. You don't get my no, like do the legwork, bro. Like do the whole point of cooking is to experiment and find your own way. And this is not a recipe thing. Like I understand, but like I am a very big motivator of here's a basis and here's a guide, but you need to like play around and have fun and experiment with it and put your own little special twist on it. Because if you don't, that it's just like you're not adding anything. You're copying a recipe, and that doesn't jive with me. I want people to like create. That's the whole beautiful part of cooking is creation.
That's chef background shit. Someone's gonna come up to you and be like, hey, how do I do this? You're like, well, you can do it this way.
Exactly.
Or not. I mean, it's straight up, it's just like, no, you give them the skills, but if it gets to the point where it's gonna be easier for you to just do it for someone than for you to explain it to them. That's when I'm like, no, you're cut off. It's like, I want to help you, but if it's like, well, how would you do it? It's like, I'm just gonna fucking do it. And it's not beneficial. But yeah, it's all about just experimenting. Like kombucha, I'm sure someone's like, so hey, what ratio of teas do you use? Do you use green or black? You're like, dude, just do something. Go, you try it.
Experiment. Like that's what I did. I experimented, and like with fermentation, you really don't need a huge cooking background to understand it. You just need to read a few guides,
a couple articles.
It's super simple to get into because when I first started this company, I was a chef that was like adding fermentation throughout the year to like my quote unquote resume or whatnot. It was just something that I like as a chef. I like to dive into new things, new cuisines, new techniques, new this, new that. But when I first started, I knew dick about fermentation. I truly did like 6 months before I opened this company. And then I went balls deep into it. I like dove into it, read books, read textbooks, read like a bunch of stuff. I had a whole cabinet of like fermentation stuff, of like just
Fermentation
mustard.
station.
Yeah, we called it the fermentation station, and
Okay, so not to cut you off. I mean, how much was Brad Leone? I know when he started flexing hard on Bon Appetit,
Bon appetit.
it did refresh my interest, but for favorite book, I mean, it's fucking Noma, dude. The Guide to Fermentation. No, that shit's Roddy. Even outsider looking in, you just open this book and it's like just guides. You're like, oh, fermented blackberries. You're like, well, that's fucking weird. 100
It's
grams
so
blackberries, 3 grams
easy.
salt. Okay.
So easy.
It's crazy.
I also like it from a textbook point of view too. I also like The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz, which is another great one because I feel like The Art of Fermentation gave me more of a textbook kind of overview of it, whereas
the Noma one.
Noma gave me more of a step-by-step. Look at this on day 1. Look at this on day 3. Look at this on day 5. Look at so it gives you that like this is what it may look like, but it's not always going to come to fruition in that way. You're not always going to need a perfect fermentation chamber or whatever like that because fermentation is going to happen in so many different ways, and as you get comfortable with it, the temperature, we always want to keep it within that range, but you don't necessarily need like a fermentation chamber to keep it.
Gotcha.
Dude, I mean, is that Roddy, that's a good point. All right, so you're familiar with fermentation to a degree of hot sauce. I mean, like kimchi, sauerkraut, true pickles. But yeah, like kombucha, I mean, it's probiotics, it's good for your gut. Next time you're at the store, the health food store, it's kind of bullshit because now there's crazy brands and it's like $8 a bottle. It's like, dude, it's sugar water and tea. But get a bottle of something and give it a shot. I mean, if that interests you at all, we could totally show you the ways of how to make this shit from scratch and blow your mind.
Yeah, I a lot of the kombuchas on the store I don't really like, purely because they start to taste like all the same, right? Because it's like a hint of this,
Pineapple
a hint of
and
that.
ginger.
Yeah. So, but also it's very hard to find naturally carbonated kombuchas because they're so volatile when you're bottling them and selling them to people, because you don't want to open it up and have it explode on you, right? But it's a lot of companies force carbonate their kombucha, and they have to because it's the only way to make things so it's not like I'm opening this up, oh, I'm covered in this now, so it's understandable. I don't know if you guys have heard of this company, but it's a company out here in San Diego, and their kombucha is godly. And it's an alcoholic kombucha, though. It's called Boochcraft. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, if it's made its way out there, but holy hell.
I mean, because all kombucha has some degree of like alcohol. Is it like as much as like a beer?
Yeah. So it's like 5-6%. So where they go through several fermentation stages. So there's an F1, an F2, and an F3 with the yeast and whatnot. So those are probably one of my favorite kombuchas on the market.
And it's nice to know that he mentioned like there is like the alcohol in it, which it's in anything, but just so people are looking, you're not buying a 6-pack of this to get fucked up. That you'll do other damage. You'll be doing other things.
Because there's a huge market, especially in San Diego, there's a huge market for alcoholic kombucha. Instead of beers, it's now alcoholic kombucha. I don't know if it's hit over there yet.
But it's not. But imagine if it's like a really premium kombucha, like if your guts aren't used to the probiotics, like don't just start pounding this shit, right? Like have like half a bottle at a time. It fixed, let's see how the belly works with it,
Yeah. Whatever you do, don't start on GTs. That's like the GTs are like the hardcore kombucha drinkers where it literally tastes like vinegar. And you're just sitting there drinking vinegar and you're like, what is this? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, shit your pants hard. Be careful.
I mean, some people are into that.
But yeah, dude,
I draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, but it could be a nice little eye awakener for me because just like goofing off making kombucha, I mean, dude, that could be vinegars real quick, and then you might be like, all right, let me try peppers and goof off. But yeah, anyone else listening, just if you got questions, reach out to the people that are doing it. They're not doing it because they hate it. They're doing it because they love it. So, I mean, they want to assist. They want to help. They'll give you some good directions on going, but do it, fuck up, make mistakes. Do it quickly. Don't tiptoe. Go hard. You'll learn a lot quicker that way. Like go in with super dirty hands and then you'll be like, oh, that didn't work. Or rather than the other extreme route where you're so cautious and you're terrified about making a mistake, you'll get the hang of it. That's kind of my input. Like make mistakes quickly.
You know what I want to do though, and I've been thinking about it for a while. I want to make like my own alcohol. I want to try to like making like mead or something.
Bathtub gin?
Yeah,
Yeah, dude, that,
gin. Like I want to just like make some hooch, and I'm not even drinking anymore. But if I make my own, I would love to get a little, hooch from my own making.
Dude, mead is like one of the easiest ones to make. It's literally just honey and water, and you're adding yeast, and it's turning into alcohol. It's so.
Have you made that before, Sean?
I've not messed with it. It's like it's on the list of many things that I want to do. But it's just like with keeping. It's busy lately, so.
It's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope because then I want to do that, right? And then I want to do but I want to do mead now, and I want to do this. So, I have a little. We have at least 6 to 8 months of like stuff lined up, like flavors of hot sauce, new products, like all these things that we want to do, and it's just like all the stuff's getting added to the back of the list, and I'm like, God damn, when am I gonna have time for all this?
What you got, Roddy? It looked like you had a thought a little bit ago.
Yeah, no, just he mentioned that it was just gonna be sugar. I mean, honey and water and yeast.
Yep.
Yeah, and then like I'm like, hey, can you like flavor it? I've seen the people who like have like flavored stuff. Like, how do you just go on about that? Like, and how do you measure percentages for how much honey to water you add and like how much yeast and stuff?
Google search. I mean, you can do a lot in secondary ferments like kombuchas. I imagine some people they just make their kombucha straight up, but then they do secondary ferments with other flavoring. But yeah, straight up, mead is the easiest shit to ferment. Just honey, water, little yeast, and then I always was told like raisins for some reason because just like the sugars kickstart
adds more flavorings and stuff too.
And that's it, dude. I mean, I've known a lot of people, they say don't because I was really interested in it, but they say it's so fucking slippery. People think beer's easy. No, beer's pretty hard. It's a lot
very hard
at once. But like mead, set it and forget, bottle, done. And then you're like, all right, maybe let's try wine. Then you're like, okay, let's try beer. And it's gonna take over your whole life. But I mean, yeah,
exactly.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, so ferment, especially with like mead and kombucha and stuff like that, they go through different stages of fermentations. You hear F1, F2, F3. So the first one is the primary fermentation where it ferments and it does its thing, whether it's kombucha where it's converting the stuff to acid, or the honey or the yeast in the mead where it's converting to alcohols and whatnot. And then you go into the flavoring fermentation, the F2, and then that flavors all your stuff. And then you go into, depending for kombucha, you do a third fermentation where it's you're pitching yeast into the kombucha because there's not enough yeast in a naturally occurring and a naturally fermenting kombucha to create a ton of alcohol. So when you're making alcoholic kombucha, you want to pitch yeast, whether you use champagne yeast or something like of the sort. So you're pitching a yeast into it after you do the flavorings, and you have to do it. That's the hard part. Honestly, that is the hard part because if you're not doing it, if you're not doing it correctly or doing it with the right ratios, it's gonna taste like yeast. I've tried it before, and I'm like, ooh, nope,
yeasty boys.
It was like fruit flavored yeast. I was like, no, this isn't right.
So, Roddy, you might have caught that similar taste like back in the day. Like, think like a big triple IPA, like an imperial triple IPA.
Yeah,
it's like old. But then like that's just cellar aging for years, and then like the bottom of the pint. Me and my friends, we call it the yeasty boys. You just take a little sip, and that's all you taste, just like the spent yeast, and it's cloudy on the bottom, dude. You got some chew on the bottom of there.
The funny thing is they started putting hops in beer like as a flavoring, but it also has antimicrobial purposes and properties, so it actually helps the beer like ferment well, because it keeps the bad stuff away.
He was talking about the explosive, like on like legit kombuchas and everything, and they just erupt. Shit you not. Before I sat down to get ready for this, I opened up mine and it just volcanoed all over. And I walked out and I walked by Hannah when she's on the couch, and the first thing I said is, "I didn't piss my pants." But if you saw it right now, it looks like it's just explosion. But hey, man, it happens.
Did you shake it?
No, it was just from the fridge. Open it right here, just, and it's like, all right, well, that's going good.
I
Just
wonder
that
if
natural occurring CO2.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the one of the good ones where they have the naturally occurring.
Some of that good, but yeah, dude. Anyways, yeah, that does happen every once in a while, people.
Yeah, I finally got to, because I make kombucha at home too, so I finally got to the point where I perfected my carbonation to where I can pop it open and not be scared.
I never got that far.
It's
I
tough.
always drink it just straight up, like room temp from the teat, never even trying to get like any carbonation. So I'd get the effects, but that was about it. But then I try to do like secondary fermentations with like a sliver of mango. And then sometimes those are pretty good. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
But that's the beautiful, like what we were talking about, is that's the beautiful thing about cooking, is like there's so much you can do, and like there's little experiments here and there. Obviously, with fermentation, you don't want to kill yourself, right? You don't want to create botulism or anything like that, and that's the scary thing. That really is the scary part of when you're first jumping into it. Because I've had a few fermentations when I started. I'm like, am I going to die?
So Roddy,
yeah, no, that just scared the crap out of
careful.
me. I don't want to mess. I'm gonna keep just like not fermenting or making anything.
No, really, like it's most of the times you're not gonna die. So what we always
Most
say
of
is
the time. What about the other times? Am I gonna die?
you never
every
know.
time?
You know, it's
What?
just one of those risks that you gotta
I don't
take.
want to fuck around and find out.
We'll be at your visitation. Like, here lies Roddy. He tried fermenting.
Hell no.
Goddamn
but-
botulism. First account in Philadelphia in about 30 years.
No, for real, it's so rare now. But just use your nose. If it smells like shit, then toss it.
Exactly.
That's
Or
really
visual.
what it
I
was.
just pitched out multiple bags of pepper mash that I did for like funky garlic, which it's heartbreaking. But when I was like receiving the peppers, I just didn't give it that time with temperature once it was sealed, and it was my own neglect. And the bags didn't explode by any means. They did not mold either, but just the color I wasn't happy with. It was just darker than it should have been. And it's one of those things like, let your nose, let your eyes be the judge of it. Simple as
How
that.
did it
Don't
smell?
question it.
Did it smell okay?
Didn't even bother opening it, just from other bags.
really?
Just with like how bright and fresh they were looking, just appearance wise, it was just dark and just muddy. And even if I think the taste would have been on, the colors would have not looked good. So I was just like, all right, take my medicine, to the point where it's like, why even risk it? But yeah, we'll help you, Roddy. You won't die, maybe, hopefully.
I'm gonna start a fund of go help Roddy ferment.
Just in case it hits the fan.
Yo, have you guys seen the movie The Menu on HBO Max?
Yes, and at first, when I first watched it, because my wife put it on, and I was like, "Babe, what is this?" And it's like it feels pretentious as hell at first, and then it keeps continuing, and then I'm like, "Oh, I love this."
It is a great movie. My wife and I watched it last night. Like just thinking of you guys as like chefs and stuff. You were talking about the beauty of cooking, and the first plate and the first course when they were making the island, the way they presented, like I thought it was just beautiful, and also the memories. That chicken thigh with the scissors looked just perfect. And when they made tacos out of that, I was like, oh my god, I just want to eat those right now.
What is this movie,
dude?
Is
It's
it
on HBO Max. It's called The Menu.
Gotta watch it. It's so
is
good.
like brand new.
So good.
it's like 4 months old, 3 months old, 4 months old.
I mean, I get like I imagine what you thought, like, like new age chef stuff. You're just like, it's all a bunch of bullshit. Like, that's why I did like the bear. I thought that was kind of cool. It's like bare bones, what is good food? And it's a little drama, but I mean, a lot of that shit is like PTSD. Like, people don't work in places where you get screamed and yelled at about just being a pathetic piece of human shit. And you just have to have a smile on and be like, yes, chef. I mean,
I don't know how to describe the menu without giving Sean, help me out here. Like,
so
is
the
it
menu, like I said, it starts off with that feeling of pretentiousness, right? And you get that because I mean, we've been in the industry, so you get that ickiness feel of like
it's like Hollywood.
What are those? The one in Chicago. What? Alinea?
Oh, Alinea.
Alinea. Yeah. So you get like Alinea vibes, right? And then all of a sudden it starts to get
of steam and stupid shit.
100%. So you're getting those vibes, and then all of a sudden it like shifts and it gets 10 times better, and then you're like, I see what they're doing here. I understand this now. But as so here let me, because I feel like I need to preface this. I love and will go to fine dining restaurants and eat at fine dining restaurants, and I will respect the craft. I will respect the time, the energy, the technique, all the learning that went into this food, and the care and the quality of the food. Because I've worked at some restaurants that have some really good quality, like meats and stuff, and I'm like, ooh, now I know the difference of poor quality and good quality. But I don't like the mentality that goes along with these high-end restaurants. I don't like the grind set. I don't like the giving your entire life to your craft. I like the work-life balance. I like enjoying my life for what I have. I like, spending time with the people I care about, so that's one of the things that's why I got into business for myself. Like, I'm just like, I don't want to do that shit anymore. I love cooking. Like, cooking will never leave me. It's in my blood, and it's going to stay there. And I do it all the time at home, and I experiment and stuff at work with hot sauces and stuff. But the grind set mentality that goes along with fine dining cooking, and the first in last out, and the working off the clock, and it's shifting. The perception and the actual workforce is starting to shift. So,
dude, much loved about everything you just said there. People have no idea, and it's not like our job is more difficult than yours. It's different, and there's nothing else out there like it. Dude, that's why I snuck out, dude. I mean, 18 years. It got to the point, Roddy, where you were like bragging with the people next to you, just like, well, how many days it's been since you've had a day off? You're like, well, 12, 14 days. Another guy would be like, shit, I did 75 hours this week. And you're like, oh, well, guess what, motherfucker? And it's like, you guys are arguing about not having a life, and you feel damn good about it. You don't see your friends. There's no birthdays. There's no funerals. There's no weddings. There's no holidays. And we still
restaurant life is leaving.
But the thing is like, it ingrains that sense of pride in you, that pride that you're working yourself to the fucking bone. And it's I used to be like that when I was 25. I was working as an executive chef for a catering company, and I was like, oh yeah, dude, I worked 80 hours this week. I haven't had a day off. And it's just like, and I'm like bragging, and I'm now 35, and now I look 10 years back at myself, and I'm like, that was stupid. Like,
but it wasn't at the time. It was just, we felt so fucking good about it. And then I always think back, like, dude, like, you felt every day, you're just like, well, I worked so long, no days off, long days, long hours, no sleep, but you're doing it for like your employers, and you're just like, God, I feel really good about that. And then when you look back, you're just like, dude, I wasn't doing that for fucking no one. I mean, I was so irreplaceable. I mean, they could have just been like, all right, next. But you just felt so good, and it's just a fucked up system to be in. Fine dining, I would like to go back, help if I had buddies wanted to start up a restaurant, like a fun niche, fun concept, but the fine dining grind is too much. It was fun, but professionally, no way in hell. Because if you're gonna do it, you got to do it well, and if you don't do it well, it ain't fine dining. Most of the places that label it fine dining, it's not fine dining. Yeah, ain't doing that shit. No mas.
Sam, move to Philly and let's open a restaurant.
No, are you kidding me? Unless you want to do like fucking smash burgers or like,
Oh yeah, dude, it would be like just quick foods. I wouldn't go into like anything fine or like fancy. It would be like quick bites, burgers, tacos, sandwiches.
And I would think like even Sean would agree. Like when you're in that fine dining sense, you think like fine dining is the best, and then when you get out of that, you see so much pride and beauty in a simple thing, like a fucking straight up like a fried bologna sandwich. Sounds funny, but if you go to some dude that crushes it, you're gonna be like, this is way fucking better than that bullshit.
Sam, you need to watch. I swear to God, drop everything, because everything you're saying, you need to watch the menu.
Okay.
Like tonight,
my
tomorrow,
God,
I don't care. Watch the menu, and I swear to God, I want you to text me later after you watch it, and you'd be like, "Holy shit!
Yeah,
holy shit!
That's
they get it."
Man.
Yeah, this is the moment.
Like,
well, it's
Roddy knows what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
With like the El Jefe, with the Cuban subs, and what the hell is his name? He did fucking Star Wars, but the Chef movie. It's that same concept.
Dude.
Which I like. I like how that tier, and some people would be like, "Oh, he just sold out." It's like, no, dude, he's showing that really simple foods can be done very fucking well, and that's the only stuff I like to look for now. Unless it's some really fun, experiential, like fine dining. Just give me an amazing fucking whatever. It doesn't matter. Like the best fried rice, awesome. Fuck the great Kobe steak. Give me a fucking pork chop that's on a piece of bread with American cheese, and whatever it may be, if it's done well.
And that's really one of the tenets of my cooking. But you're literally the menu is like Chef, that movie Chef, but in a more outlandish way. It's kind of crazy what they do with it, but it's hilarious. I don't want to say anything more because I don't want to ruin it, but
please watch it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It kind of went back to when I learned when I was watching a bunch of cooking shows, and like when I was first getting started and stuff. I used to watch Kitchen Nightmares a lot, right?
I never did. I was like, fuck that show.
I love Kitchen Nightmares. I don't like I don't think I even like any other cooking show, truly.
Iron Chef, OGs.
No, dude, I'm not a fan of those.
Bomb.
No, you know what I really like is David Chang shows. David Chang, Mind of the Chef. Oh my God.
Like Anthony Bourdain. That's when he was traveling because he was eating peasant food all over the world.
Yeah, 100% Bourdain. Yeah. So, but basically, I go back to like when I was watching those shows, and that's where I got a lot of like my mentality with cooking is Gordon Ramsay. When he came into these restaurants that were just absolute trash, he would like, no, bring it back to basics, keep it simple, like highlight simple flavors, like don't try to overcomplicate it. One of my favorite scenes is he's like, I want you to make a broccoli soup, and he goes to the chef, and the chef tries to make a broccoli soup, and there's like 16 ingredients in there, and he tastes it, and it looks pale, right? It's like almost pale brown because there's so many fucking ingredients in there. And he goes, no, okay, now taste mine. You know what's in there? Broccoli, and broccoli. Like, it's like, that's how simple it is to like cook and do things right. It was a vibrant green soup, broccoli, water, salt, and whatever,
splash of cream or something.
Yeah, it just simple soup. Highlight your ingredient, right? And that's the kind of way that I want to go with hot sauce too. Is I highlight ingredients.
Full circle, Roddy. There it is.
Full circle. I don't add a ton. he's like nodding. He's like, there we go, we got it. But I don't add a ton of spices into my hot sauce or anything like that. I want the focus to be on the fermentation. I want the focus, like beat your meat. I want you to taste those earthy notes. I want you to taste a little horseradish, and I want you to taste that umami of the porcini mushroom. I'm not adding any other spices to it. I want you to taste those little things, and I want your mouth to like feel that, right? And I don't want to overcomplicate things.
This is getting
That's
hot
amazing.
and heavy, dude. I would love to check out your fermenting station, or just like I would love to like walk in. If I'm in San Diego, give you a hand if you need a bottle and stuff. Just because I make hot sauce, I ferment a couple things, but the way you do it, I imagine is very unique. It would be cool as shit. It'd be pleasure to just be like, dude, I'm gonna deal with some I don't know, fun times, man, fun times.
All right, boys, you guys go get a room, but I
We
think that
will.
We
At
already
this
have
point-
one next
at
year.
this
Albuquerque.
point we have spilled plenty of sauce. So Sean, tell the people where can they find you?
Down to ferment.com with the number 2, not the TO. So down number 2 ferment.com. We're also on Instagram like that, down to ferment. And yeah, we just keeping it DTF, bro.
Sam.
Sorry, DTF. Sam Hazings with Sam Sauce. www.samsauce.com.
And I'm Faya at Faya.co on Instagram and Faya.co, the website. And please follow us on Instagram at Spill the Sauce Podcast. And you can email us if you would like to say whatever you want at spillthesaucepodcast@gmail.com. And any last words?
I don't know. I giggle when I look at your face. It's pretty funny, Roddy. Give me a smile.
I'm gonna teach you how to ferment, Roddy. We're gonna jump into there.
You're gonna
Okay.
like the way you look. I guarantee it.
All right.